So let's kickstart with our first panel discussion today. This is entitled, What is the Regional Outlook for SMEs during 2017? And let's meet our moderator. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mr. Amir Ahmed, partner of Pinsent Masons. Now, Amir is one of a very few lawyers in the Middle East who has studied and practiced in both sophisticated common law and civil law jurisdictions. He has extensive experience acting on multi-sourced Islamic and ECA-supported financings and worked on some of the big-ticket finance deals here within the Middle Eastern region. Now, joining him today are his four panelists. So please welcome to the stage Ms. Tasneem Lakdawala, partner of KPMG. Morning, Tasneem. She is going to be joined by David Hunt, founder and owner of Linwood Consulting, UAE. Mazdak Rafati, managing partner of Ludwa International Consulting and journalist. Welcome. And last but not least, it is Waleed Hanna, founder and managing partner at East Venture Partners. Now, Amir is going to be taking over and guiding his panelists, but what we're going to be doing is we're going to be doing a 35-minute chat on board, and then we're going to be opening it up to the floor for the last 10 minutes. My encouragement to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, is as you listen to this 35-minute chat, write down your questions. And then when we get to the 10-minute Q&A, we can then have some of that interaction. Amir, over to you.
Thank you. Welcome. Good morning. My name is Amir Ahmed, a partner at Pinsent Masons in Dubai. Welcome to the to SME World 2017 Summit. Panel discussion, the first one in the morning. I hope you guys had enough coffee and you're awake. The intention is to make it very informative for you guys. And towards the end of this panel discussion, we really want to get as many questions as possible so that there could be an effective knowledge sharing with all of you. So, you know, you can benefit from this event by not only coming and having a coffee, but really, you know, getting to get good ideas which will help your companies, evolve, I guess. Why am I here, first of all, right? And why am I moderating this event? About 3 years ago, we as a firm were asked to look into a problem facing SMEs in Dubai by Dubai Economic Council, one of the government bodies in Dubai. The question was, why are banks not lending to SMEs in Dubai and the UAE? In my first discussions with the General Counsel at DC, one of the reasons that he mentioned was, because banks can't take security from SMEs. So we, as lawyers, Pinsent Masons as lawyers, we did a study, took us 6 months to complete that, on looking at the legal, looking at the legal regime of how you can take security on assets that belong to SMEs, what were the bottlenecks, and how those bottlenecks could be changed. We did a couple of recommendations for the Dubai government, 10 recommendations, and I'm very, very pleased and happy to share with you that one of the recommendations has become law. So there is a new pledge law effective last week, Thursday, that has come into effect in Dubai. That's going to make it easier for SMEs to give securities to lenders. So legal problem, one legal problem solved. That's a lot about me then, I guess. The moderators. So we have from the panelists, 4 panelists here. I think it would be good to start out with the introduction of the panelists. Tasneem, partner at KPMG.
Thanks, Amar. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tasneem. I work with KPMG in the advisory services team. And over the last 2 years, my predominant focus from myself and my team has been in supporting SMEs on their path for growth, as we call it, right? Clearly, as Saeed mentioned a few minutes back in his opening address, by 2021, you're looking at SMEs contributing to about 45% of the GDP. So clearly there is a focus and there is more emphasis on this sector, and hence the specific, I guess, attention and carve out from our side as a firm, where we have now a dedicated team working specifically to support SMEs on a multitude of services as they, right from startup stage all the way till they grow to become a sizable business.
David?
Good morning, everybody. My name is David Hunt. I'm the owner and founder of Linwood Consulting, specializing in helping small businesses raise finance and their financial planning, both here in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia. Prior to that, I was running a couple of finance companies, specializing in lending to SMEs, and before that, 25 years of international experience with HSBC Group around the world and in emerging markets.
Thank you. Mazdak, please.
Yes, good morning. My name is Mazdak Rafati. I'm the managing partner of Ludwa International Consulting. We are since 12 years in UAE and supporting European companies to come to the region and establish, mainly from the German-speaking area, because I'm German, as you clearly see, blue eyes, blonde hair, so that's besides of that, I'm the columnist of the Foreign Direct Investment magazine of Financial Times. That's why they call me journalist. And since I'm passionate about what I'm doing, foreign direct investment, combining with SMEs, I'm also trying to publish every now and then articles about why SMEs are more sustainable foreign direct investment partners for any economy. So that is basically my focus on SME work in the region.
Walid, please.
Yes, Walid Hanna. Middle East Venture Partners is a venture capital firm. We invest in SMEs, but more particularly in technology startups. So we're in the business of this digital economy that is growing, and we support those SMEs in funding them and gaining market share and opening markets. We've invested in 37 companies so far across the region. A lot of them are in the UAE, Beirut, Amman, Cairo, even Istanbul. And we don't wear suits because we deal with startups on a daily basis.
So, Walid, the cool guys then, right? The cool guys not wearing suits. So let's get started with some of the questions, right? With the panel discussion. 2017 is going to be quite an interesting year, has been promised. I think at the start of each year they promise that it's going to be an interesting year. So I wanted to start out with Mazdak, right? When we speak about SMEs, right? It's quite an interesting definition, right? I mean, what would be a really good way of defining SMEs in the GCC? Yeah. What are some of the scales within that definition that you see?
First comment, maybe every time things get challenging, everybody talks about interesting, right? So it is going to be actually a challenging 2017. That's why we're sitting here. I think we should be very, very straightforward about what's going on. Now, coming to the question, yes, SME is also one of those terms that everybody just throws in. And then we saw basically the importance of SMEs for every economy. That's evident. But as we're trying to focus on the GCC countries, the economic structure of these countries is totally different than where basically I grew up, or in Central Europe or in US. So that when you talk about SMEs there, it's evident that all of them basically are locally owned, all right? Or they have the same framework for their activities. Now, then you get the definition by, be it a turnover, right? There you can also talk about micro companies, which are actually probably the most important ones, because that's where Walid comes in. That's where things are seeded and they grow to become bigger. If you take a look at the top 10 most valuable countries in the world, I think like 2-3 decades of some of them were actually one part of that micro companies. So we should not actually forget about these small companies making less than 2 million turnover, having less than 10 employees, because those are really the companies who are challenged in interesting times, right? So then you have the medium-sized companies who, again, you can define by turnover, term sheet, or. But what I would like to focus on is the GCC particular issue, that you have here a totally different differentiation, if you ask me, not only by these three, generally by European Commission or other organization used for defining those sectors. You have here the onshore, offshore, and free zone companies. You have here basically joint owned with Emiratis and expats, and totally foreign owned. Why is that important? Because in most of the GCC countries, we have roughly around 80 to 85% external company owners or expats or whatever you want to call them, but they're not citizens in that country. So they have a total different approach to the challenges of being in a country or in a region like this and working. And I'm an admirer of all the efforts that the GCC countries are putting into the SMEs owned by their own citizens. But I had just a discussion with Mr. Al-Mari before the event started. I still think that there's a lot needs to happen, because it's a pool of talents, it's a pool of opportunities that we have within these countries, which is definitely not being tackled. We basically come up with visa regulations to attract talents, but it's much easier to focus on what we have here. And I think this is a part that I would like to focus on within this event, if possible.
Thank you, Mastak. David, you have been in the finance business for a very long time, right? And so you've seen all of the cycles that this region has faced, but also globally. So if you look at the SMEs, and if you look at 2016, 17, 18, 19 onwards, right? What were some of the challenges that were there in 2016 for SMEs to raise funding? And how do you see that developing in 17, 18, 19 scenario?
Good question. I think to look at that, you have to consider what happened in 2014 and 2015, where you had a lot of liquidity in the market. Banks were super aggressive with lending to SMEs. It was seen as a very lucrative part of banks' portfolios. You're able to get 24, 25% on loans, which appeared very, very attractive to banks in a benign economic environment with high oil prices. That when oil prices started to fall and the liquidity in the market tightened, that all stopped around the end of 2015 and beginning of 2016. So SMEs went from an abundant liquidity pool to fishing in a pool that was very, very small, and a lot of banks experienced quite a lot of red ink in their financial results towards the end of 2015, 2016. So in 2016, I would say SMEs faced a lot of challenges in raising finance. You probably only now have 4 or 5 banks that are actively participating in lending to SMEs, and a number of the finance companies have also had their fingers burnt in that space. You're finding that banks typically will only lend to the companies that they know, the ones that have been customers with them for some time. Collateral requirements have increased. Banks typically only want to lend to companies where they can get some tangible, registrable assets as security. It doesn't help those companies that don't have assets, that are really relying on cash flow. The payment cycles in the Emirates have lengthened as liquidity has got tightened. People are extending payments. Therefore, SMEs are challenged in terms of freeing up cash that's tied up in receivables. That's something that they're facing. Generally, you're finding it's a much, much tougher environment. And going forward, I don't see that changing. Certainly not this year. Oil prices are still expected to remain low. So I think we're into still a difficult financing period for SMEs. And banks are just being very, very cautious in terms of lending. So you've got to look at alternative solutions, whether it be alternative platforms such as Beehive that are outside of the banking system to raise money, or factoring, or just looking at raising more equity. You've got to look at alternative solutions at the moment.
Yeah. There's always a higher price for equity or some of those alternatives, but that's interesting. Thank you. Tasneem, so partner at KPMG, right? Looking at organizational structures and how organizational structures, can be enhanced. Sure. So when you look at SMEs in Dubai, from a practical side, what are some of the key issues that taking a helicopter view, right, on some of the matters that you have worked on? What are some of the typical issues that SMEs face, that entrepreneurs face in relation to growth, coming to the next phase it is in their growth cycle? And what can some of these entrepreneurs that are here today can learn and do better?
So when you look at these SMEs, especially in this region and this part of the world, I think the term SMEs and family businesses is very closely integrated, right? And I think this is where, when we talk to clients, we actually speak to them saying you need to distinguish or segregate what you call family versus what is business. You may start off a business as a sole trader, and eventually with the intent of it growing over a couple of years and getting, your sons and your grandsons as part of the business. But eventually, I think somewhere down the line, as you're growing, you need to be able to make that distinction to allow the right, I would say, people with skill sets, having the right managerial and leadership skill sets to take over management of those businesses. So you may start off as an entrepreneur, you may start off as a sole owner, but as your business grows, you're growing that with the intent of having the next generation take it over. And I think where we fail, or most companies fail in that context, is again, saying, okay, I will let the legacy get carried over by a son or a grandson, but what you need to look after is saying, yes, I have the ownership structure which moves on to the next kin, but does he or she have the right managerial skills? And I think now a lot of, entrepreneurs have started realizing that. So the next generation actually goes through, I would say, the management ladder. They start off at the lowest levels, at the junior levels. They work and they earn their merits as they move up. And that's really helping, right? So that is a mindset or a focus change, I think, which increasingly we've been seeing. And it's only positive, because that's the only way for your business to grow. You have to get professionalized somewhere. The other important aspect also is sometimes you are faced with challenges when you're in a family business, with startup with these small little SMEs on the governance side. So I think our suggestion and advice to clients is, please, at the early stages as you're growing, look at good and sound governance practices so that, when you do go through a rough patch in the business or otherwise, you can reflect back on these good governance practices and make sure, your businesses are going through with the right practices rather than getting, inundated with emotions and, with all the anxiety which comes, when there is a challenging situation.
Thank you, Tasneem. Waleed, when we were speaking, I think a couple of days ago, you mentioned you are into the digital space, right? And I usually get lost in the digital space because I struggle with this thing, So if you look at SMEs that are operating within the digital space, are there any particular challenges that they face, within the UAE, let's say, within Dubai, that you can point to?
Absolutely, there are many challenges for SMEs or startups in the UAE in particular. Well, first challenge is get paid. By selling services online, you usually get paid by using a payment gateway, credit cards. In the case of e-commerce, for example, they get paid mostly by cash on delivery. And that's a big mess because return policy and increases working capital, and it becomes a hassle. So digital payments are getting mature, increasing, but we're not there yet. So I would say this is probably the main challenge for e-commerce companies, for example. The likes of Souq.com are being disrupted by other e-commerces and globally. Amazon is coming to the region, has always been in the region. They're selling for like $500 million worth of goods. So international competition is also competing and hurting the local SMEs. Souq is a Dubai-based company, for example. Now, in other verticals, travel like Expedia and Booking are hurting the regional SMEs in the travel space. The likes of Google and Facebook are eating up the largest piece of cake with regards to advertising. And they're competing with the regular, advertising agencies in this part of the world. Other challenges is really scale up, grow beyond the borders, finding the right talent. Despite how open Dubai and the UAE is, finding the right talent in technology in particular is a challenge. Okay, the list is long.
Okay. Then I'm going to go back to David for another question then. David, when I was doing this report for DC on bottlenecks to credit, right, for bank credit to SMEs, I was astonished to find that there weren't really a lot of alternative credit providers at that moment in time. This was like 3-4 years ago in Dubai that were active in that space. And in New York or in London, you have, I think that market is taken up by 30-40% of those alternative providers. It could be funds, it could be alternative credit, peer-to-peer lending sort of scenarios. Has that changed a bit in the region?
It has a little bit. Obviously, you've got your commercial banks that are very, very comfortable providing short-term working capital, trade finance lines. Where SMEs are challenged is often in providing longer-term finance. Alternative providers have grown up in the region. You've got Beehive. It's been a very, very successful platform for raising funds outside of the traditional banking sector. I think you can raise anything up to about $1 million dirhams. In fact, just raised a company I'm associated with just raised $1 million dirhams on Beehive for 24 months. This is a peer-to-peer lending group where small investors put money onto the platform and invest it, and companies go there, get listed, and seek to raise funds. And that platform's developed into a Sharia-compliant platform and doing invoice discounting as well. You've also got many sort of equity platforms such as Eureka that helps small companies raise equity for growth funding. Again, that's a successful platform that has grown up. And also, outside of banking, you've got factoring companies as well who will help release funds tied up in invoices where SMEs, traditionally, cash is the lifeblood of SMEs and they need cash today. So if you can factor your invoices with one of the factoring companies, and often those debts are insured, that's another way of releasing funds into the business, because without doubt, a lot of SMEs are profitable, but without cash flow, they can die.
Okay. But David, I'm going to just add on another question to this, right? And I think that's a question that most of you guys perhaps would be interested in, pricing, right?
Pricing.
So if I were to go to a commercial bank, what sort of, under the present scenarios, let's say a secured loan, what sort of pricing range am I looking at? And would it differ if I go to a peer-to-peer lending scenario or other funds?
Yeah, possibly. Obviously, it depends on the quality of security that you're offering. If it's high quality security, obviously the lower rate you can obtain. Typically, the rates I'm seeing with the companies I work with are probably in the region of 8 to 10% for secured lending. Better security, lower end of that rate. On some of the alternative providers, it can be higher. There's obviously a price to pay for unsecured lending, can be in the region of probably 12, 13, 14 or 15%. That's expensive, but often some companies have no other choices.
Okay, that's quite interesting. So between 8 to 20, 13, 15%, it could be depending
the total
on
range.
the range.
But let's not forget, companies 2 or 3 years ago were happy to pay 24% for funding from some people.
Extraordinary. Mazdak, you said you had some controversial, topics that you wanted to, to excite the crowd with. So the floor is yours.
I'm just also overwhelmed about the discussion we're having at the moment. I mean, just because we paid 25% before doesn't make 15% better in a situation that we're having at the moment, right? So then we have the tech companies who have a lot of potential, who could tackle a lot of these issues, but they have a lot of challenges. So that it raises a lot of question in my head. Why is it not happening? We're having, coming to a question, we are an absolutely heaven for all, we should be, heaven for all the tech companies being tax-free, multinational, open to everybody to come here. Still, we don't have this start-up culture where everything else is happening. Now, that I can answer you why it's not. Again, going back to the 10 or 20 most valuable companies 3 decades ago, some of them didn't exist, but they all started up as what? As a garage company. Guess what? That's illegal in UAE, right? So I'm not saying that the startup costs compared to other places, yes, it's okay. But for that particular sector, there's a lot of things actually still missing, which I think Walid can be of more assistance and answer a lot of questions. What I would like to point out is that you need to have a little bit more holistic approach also to the issues of the SMEs. I think in no other sector it's true that business is people's business like it is with SMEs. Like everybody of us, we have, of course it says consultant, but it's a company behind it, right? So what we do is we bring services, but at the end it's a company that I'm running. So, and I'm attached to it directly. So when I came here 12 years ago, the circumstances were brilliant. I loved it. It's a reason that I'm staying here 12 years. But if I look now at the challenges that all the companies from abroad mainly, foreign direct investment again related, have coming into the country, these are people. So what do? Of course the business, the cost of capital, the cost of setup matters. But on the other hand, they look at the costs that they have for living, right? So what you have now is a huge burden for everybody who comes here. And then you have, again, this big black cloud of taxation, which I think we're going to tackle later on in one of the panels, but which is not clear and brings a lot of rumors and insecurity. So we have a lot of insecurity at the moment from the international perspective. It is already tough enough to have an international politic issue, which I'm not going to tackle now, which brings a lot of insecurity in overall planning. But I think a lot of small problems that we have here, which are connected to everyday's life, are again another burden that need to be answered, and not only focus on basically the operational perspective or the financing issue, but if I want to bring my company to UAE and I have 2 kids and I need at least a space for them, can I make it? Or do I stay in Germany where I pay my taxes and I get a good education and for free? Have we come to that level that it doesn't really add up anymore? These are the questions I think I don't see many answers to. I know, Saeed, you would love to have a seat right here and answer all these questions. Or maybe you're moderating a panel later, so maybe we can tackle that issues also, or we can discuss it later. But these are like the holistic approach of the SME-driven policy. So it's not only the business part, it's the life part, which business is part of at the end of the day. I think these are questions where I personally, monitoring the entire policy making, monitoring the entire media for my column that I bring out in FDI magazine, don't see much of answer to in the entire GCC politics. Now, you might say we have other problems at the moment. True, but I think at the end of the day, coming back to the thing that I said, every business is a people's business. If I don't see opportunity for me to grow as a tech company, I don't come. Why? Because the world is open to me at the moment. Everybody's hunting for the talents, right? If I don't see my children getting an education that I am working for them to have, I don't come. If I don't see things adding up between the taxes I pay at home, where I speak my own language and have my own people, compared to what I have here, I don't come. So there's a lot of these kind of elements, I think, worth discussing, and I hope this place, I had a very good professor always saying, if you leave a seminar, I think you have more questions in your head than answers. So this is what I'm trying to actually bring in all the panels that I'm bringing. We should initiate these questions and start pink painting anything that's happening. It's lovely what we have here, yes.
Oh, yes.
But if we're not basically don't tackle the problems, there will not be any solutions. So,
thank you, Mazdak.
Sorry for
so we
taking a
saw.
little longer.
Saeed, lots of questions for you then, I guess, in your panel discussion. Thank you, Mazdak. Tasneem, cost of funding that's going up, right? That's increasing. Challenges that Mazdak mentioned. So it looks a bit challenging, right? So what are some of the, let's bring a positive tone to this, right? So what are some of the, really success stories that you have seen in your organization that you can share with us?
Sure. So I'll try and give you, I guess, references from some of the case studies or where we've helped clients. So I think one of the unique distinctions we see about these SME businesses are actually owners or very intelligent entrepreneurs who sit and do their work. You don't see them on the front pages of the newspapers. You don't see them very socially active because they are very focused on doing what they have to do, and they continue to grow their business by leaps and bounds. And I've seen tremendous success stories in the last 18 months that we've been helping clients specifically in this sector. The other interesting facet is, I think, when I talk to some of these entrepreneurs about strategy, because they are not inundated or faced with challenges of reporting to shareholders or investors, I think the pace of growth, they manage it very beautifully, right? So sometimes it may look like the business is stagnating, but it's actually not stagnating. It's actually, they've evened out the pace to their level to cope with the dynamics of what's happening in the environment and the economy around. And I think that is something which SMEs have a great advantage, which unlike, a larger organization or a complex organization cannot do. It's very difficult to adapt your strategy in a large organization, whereas in a smaller organization, you can do it a lot more in a very agile and a nimble manner as well. And I think most importantly, I think what is one unique factor which sticks out in some of these companies is how the owners and the employees are one, right? I mean, so management treats their employees as one. And the success of that enterprise, it belongs not only to the owner or the promoter, but also to the employees. And I think we've talked of, some of the examples of what all of us know of the startups which started off in a garage and today are successful companies. Effectively, those owners were eventually at one point of time employees or part of the management team. So I think these factors, when you look around, I think there's hope. I think there are a lot more, successful stories that we'll see in the coming few years. There are a lot more innovative ideas thanks to technology coming up as well. And I think there is, despite all the gloom and doom around, I think there are enough of case studies for us to take, a lot of positive messages from and turn and transform the business, in a very effective and efficient way.
Thank you, Tasneem. Walid.
Yeah.
So you are a VC, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have done 40 plus investments, right?
Yeah.
As VC. So we have lots of entrepreneurs here. They'd be interested to know at what stage in their growth is VC an option that they should be looking at? And when you are looking at investment opportunities as a VC, when do you look at those opportunities? And what are some of the, let's say, the 3 musts that need to be present for you to be able to execute, an equity deal?
Okay, I'll answer this question, but just to go back to what David and Vastak were saying earlier, with regards to cost of funding, equity doesn't really cost interest, right? Equity is a share of a company. That's what we take in exchange for helping companies to invest. That's what we take in exchange for investing in companies. So there's no short-term cost by taking over equity funding versus debt or expensive debt. And if you fail to pay us back, well, we don't want our money back. We want to sell the company and make a multiple of our money later on, several years from now. There's no default in equity investing. Back to what Razak was saying with regards to UAE. UAE is the land of security, no insecurity here. It is expensive for a startup, but what has been done in the ecosystem in the UAE was great, really fabulous. You have several accelerators, incubators, and the government has been facilitating these. You have the likes of, Dubai Silicon Oasis, 2454 Abu Dhabi, who have been funding startups. But recently, these government entities have dried up, but you see much more money now in Dubai Holding, investing in startups, in Mubadala Ventures, investing in startups. So the big boys are, the sovereign wealth fund are starting to get interested in the digital economy. So money is here, is not as much as we would have liked to. On the private sector, the likes of MEVP or Wamda Capital, Biko Capital, we're all struggling to raise money. So this would be the real challenge of SMEs and the tech space, is raising money on the equity side. You really have to be extremely good to be able to raise equity funding. In other countries, the percentage of available equity investments to GDP is much, much, much higher, like 100 times higher than what we have here. Doesn't mean it's bad, okay? It's nascent. Venture capital is nascent across the UAE and across the Arab world. But Dubai has done much better than any other place in the Middle East and is exactly the go-to place for startups to come and start their business. If they can start it in Cairo or Amman and then move to the UAE and raise Series A and B, this is also extremely good because there are no funding available in Amman and Cairo. So I'm just comparing Dubai to the rest of the Arab world, and this is the land of startups. I strongly believe so. With regards to challenges or how we select our companies, before investing, we want to see an edge, a competitive edge. Okay, we want to see that the IP has been developed in-house and not outsourced. That's a challenge. We want to see traction, serious traction, not in revenue, but it could be in a number of downloads on an app or visitors on a website. We want to see some stickiness. We want to see a low bounce rate if it's a website. And this is what we define as traction. And then we look at the unit economics, the cost of acquiring a user versus the lifetime value of a user.
Okay. Thank you, Waleed. Now, there are lots of questions, I hope. Let's start with the first.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is where we're going to open it up to you, the floor. Every panel discussion, get those questions written down, get the interaction. If I can ask you for your name, your company, and your one question only.
So, Slim Saidi from Abu Dhabi School of Management, which is part of the Abu Dhabi Chamber. A couple of years ago, when I was in the shoes of Tasneem in another place in the world, we faced actually the biggest issue with SME, with dealing with SMEs, with the way we define SMEs. And at that time, we looked at the SMEs from a behavioral perspective. If it behaves like an SME, if it works like an SME, if they buy like an SME and leadership style like an SME, then it's an SME. And we ended up in this part of the world with very, very unusual SMEs, massive, multi-billion-dollar SMEs that have complete different challenges, features, etc., but the same challenges of competencies, of learning, etc. So isn't the paradigm or the ecosystem definition or the paradigm that drives the ecosystem definition part of the problem in this part of the world? The life cycle of SMEs have accelerated a lot. The need for funding, the need for support, the need for VC is coming much earlier than traditionally and in other parts of the world. And maybe, and this is my question to you, maybe this is actually what's creating this feeling of uneasiness in the industry. And maybe we need to rethink actually the way we define SMEs in general to address them better.
So the question relates to do we need to, so the present definition of SME, right, has it changed, has it evolved, and do we need to then, reshape how we define an SME?
Yeah,
take us for that.
change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take us for that question.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question. It is indeed true that the nature of the SMEs in the Middle East is totally different than in maybe Central Europe. There is a very, very interesting conference happening. They travel around. It's the Family Business Conference. So that is actually, they tackle the issue of the governance of SMEs and where does micro start, where does it end, where does small start end, and where does actually medium-sized start and end. Now, we have Al-Habtour, for example, being defined as a medium-sized company, right? Medium-sized company. They make like $1 billion and more turnover, right? So we put them in the same pool with the micro company or with the startups. That's why I actually started that we need to define the pool more specifically, and in terms of local or regional aspects that we need to find, which is ownership, one. Second is governance, is what you're tackling, to have a better solution for each of them. At the current situation, I totally agree with you, maybe 95% of the questions are not being asked because of the wrong definition, right? That's a problem, yes.
I think there are some more questions.
We've got about 5 minutes left, Amir.
5 minutes
I've
left.
got one question here
Yeah.
and a second one over there, if that works for you.
Yeah, good. Just before the questions are asked, let's make the questions a bit more practical so that the people that are here, yes, they can take something home that would help them in their own SME scenario. Next question, please.
Hi, I'm Rohit. We are a company that works on autonomous infrastructure. My question is about how does the visa situation in the UAE need to change to help talent flow in and talent remain? Because in Silicon Valley, for example, there's this idea that you fail fast and then you learn from your mistakes. But here, if you fail, you're out of the country.
Okay, that is a very practical question. What does need to, how does the visa situation need to change? Now, I am looking at someone that I want to ask, to answer that question. He's not with me on this on the panel. But Saeed, would you like to take that? Would you like to take that question?
Well, basically, I believe I'm not the right person to answer this question when it comes to sponsoring and visa. Basically, it's the immigration or either the Ministry of Labor, basically. But I cannot declare anything or give an announcement, basically. But hopefully, policies are improving. We sensed those. We've been meeting for the past 3-4 years with the immigration, with the Ministry of Labor, and there are, inshallah, some improvements coming in the pipeline.
Thank you, Saeed.
Most welcome.
Thank you for answering that question. The last question.
Thank you. I'm Paul Epping. I'm the chapter lead of the Singularity University here in Dubai. One observation here, and then I do have a very concrete question. Firstly is that if you are talking about SMEs, talking about startups, it is about ideas. If I hear the panel with your brilliant insights, you are talking about two things. Firstly, finance. Secondly, problems. Those two things is really a hurdle for ideas. How, and here is the question, how do you here in the UAE create a foundation where people can come with their ideas and have the right people to guide them in those ideas? You are already talking about finance and about problems, taxes and whatever. It starts with ideas, and what I see here in this region is a lot of innovations, but a lot of fragmentation. There is no holism. And if there is no holism, the ideas will not come to life. And how are you going to organize that here in the UAE? And I'm very happy to help you with that on behalf of the Singularity University.
Is that directed at any of our panelists in particular?
What I really liked is the insight of Rafati, Mr. Rafati, and Mr. Walid. How are you going to select those startups? How are you doing that? And it is not only about technology. Technology is just a little part.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, I have to admit that the innovation in this part of the world is quite limited. What we see around us in terms of ideas are just inspired by the West or the East, and they want to try to copycat and start their own business by getting inspired. Now, the real innovation is in execution, and we have seen a lot of innovation in execution. The idea itself or the concept or the business model already exists. I mean, we're not going to invent another Google or, in this part of the world. I wish we could. I wish, but we haven't seen many of these on the global level at least. But we invest in what we call the MENA market leaders. So whatever is working out there with smart ideas on how to, localize, Arabize, and execute differently in this part of the world would make them very different, would increase the competitive advantage that they have locally, regionally, and sometimes globally. We've seen companies from this part of the world disrupting small verticals on a global level. It happens. So ideas are here, okay? We're not in Silicon Valley. We're very far away from that. But I believe that Dubai in particular, and the UAE in particular, as part of the MENA countries, is far more advanced in getting the right talent and getting the smart people. Now, the smart people are not only nationals, UAE nationals, and that's the strength of the UAE. They've managed to bring the smartest people from the likes of India, Pakistan, as well as Amman, Cairo, and the whole region is converging towards this country. And I believe there's a lot of potential in innovation and in startup and in technology investments in particular. That's why we're all in.
Thank you, Walid. I think that brings us really to the end of the first panel discussion.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for our moderator. Many thanks indeed, Amir. And extended thanks to our 4 panelists. Thank you very much. Some great timekeeping there. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.